Welcome to Morning Brew. Start your day in the Word with Pastor Drew McComb each weekday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. Grab your coffee and your Bible. Here's Pastor Drew.
Well, hey there, good morning. Welcome to Morning Brew. Thanks for tuning in once again. All this week we're talking about great things He has done. It's the second line, of course, of that wonderful hymn that we sing every now and again. That's entitled "To God Be the Glory," and the next line is, "Great things He has done. So loved He the world that He gave us His Son." And just a wonderful hymn. And so I wanted to focus on the great things God has done for us and just to encourage us this week that God has done so many wonderful things on our behalf through Jesus and what He accomplished on the cross. And so we're in Colossians chapter 1. If you've got your Bible, please open it there, Colossians 1, verses 13 and 14. And let's look at the text once again. I'm going to read it to you from my Bible down here. "He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of His love, in whom we have redemption through His blood, the forgiveness of sins." Now, Paul has packed so much wonderful theology into those two verses when he says He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of His love, in whom we have redemption, another big theme, through His blood, another big theme, the forgiveness of sins, another great theme. And so much wonderful Christian theology is just compressed into these two amazing verses. So let's begin by talking about the first thing that He's done for us, in the first part of that verse. He delivered us from the power of darkness. And so Paul is telling us that God, through Christ, has delivered us from a very precarious situation that we put ourselves in. The word actually in Greek is used to describe soldiers out in the battlefield who find a wounded comrade and haul them away from the jaws of the enemy to a safe place. And we remember all that happened way back in 9/11 when those brave men and women of FYPD and FYFD did so much to help people in that terrible situation way back then in 2001. And so many of them gave their lives in the process of trying to rescue others. But that's the idea of the verb in Greek, is to rescue someone from a precarious situation. The Bible describes what Jesus did on the cross as, I think, the greatest rescue mission in human history. And God has delivered us from that terrible situation, being in the kingdom of, I should say the domain of darkness, not the kingdom, the domain of darkness. The Bible tells us also that the God of this world, Satan, has blinded the eyes of the unbelievers so they would not see the glorious gospel of Christ. And so we were in a terrible situation. We were bound by sin. We were blinded by the enemy. And God had to invade our space and send His only Son to come to the cross to give His life for us so that we could be rescued. And so the question is simple. From what or where or whom did God rescue us from? Well, Paul tells us very clearly in the second part of the verse that He has rescued us from the power or the domain of darkness. John, in his epistle, 1 John 5:19, says the whole world lies under the power of the evil one. And so the who that God rescued us from was the devil himself. The great danger we were rescued from was that the wages of sin, because of our sin, the wages of sin is death. And so we were liable for eternal death until Jesus rescued us. We were also held captive in the enemy's prison camp, if you will, under sentence of death with no possibility of escape or parole. And so what God did through Christ in rescuing us was to snatch us out of danger and away from the clutches of our enemy, our captor, Satan. We have been delivered, we've been rescued, not only from the control of Satan, but also from that condition of darkness that I spoke about a minute or two ago. It kind of reminds us of that situation in the Old Testament, in the book of Judges, where we read the story of Samson, and just that mighty man, is the strongest man that ever walked the earth, so it seems. But the problem was he had some weaknesses, and he submitted to Delilah's advances. She seduced him, she tricked him, and he gave up the power of his strength and ended up on a mill going round and round, blind because they gouged out his eyes, the Philistines that is, and chained him to a Philistine grain mill, going round and round. And someday, many, many years ago, very cleverly said this about that situation: sin binds, sin blinds, and sin grinds. And what a terrible picture of our condition before we were saved, before Jesus rescued us. We were bound by Satan. We were blinded to the truth of the gospel of Christ, and we were grinding out a pathetic existence, chained to our situation, doing nothing but going round and round. And yet, the Bible tells us that He delivered us from all of that, from the power of darkness and from the power of the domain of the enemy, into the kingdom of His dear Son. And so, what a wonderful beginning to this study, and these two simple verses in Colossians, that God has done so much for us. He began that by rescuing us. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how He transferred us from that place that we were in to a glorious place, into the kingdom of the Son of His love. So we'll carry that on tomorrow, and we'll see you then. God bless you. Bye-bye.